Let's turn our attention to pharma, which always stays in the news, what with the increasing frequency of observations by the U.S. regulator, the U.S. FDA. It's a continuing story. It's a source of consternation for many of the large pharma companies, which is why it gives me great pleasure today to assess all of the issues affecting Indian pharma sector with Murtaza Khorakiwala, Managing Director at Wockhardt. I must correct myself, it's Dr. Murtaza Khorakiwala, Managing Director at Wockhardt. The stock today up 1.63% in trade at 1,052. Mr. Khorakiwala, pleasure to have you here on NDTV Profit. You had a gathering of pharma leaders recently, and the focus was really around how to make, develop and innovate in India. And I want to start with the Make in India piece of it. Do you believe that Indian pharma really needs much more stringent manufacturing practices than it's currently implementing?
Yes, I think CII, and various associations, we are here trying to attempt to try to take the discussion forward for the Indian pharmaceutical industry. I'll come back to your question a little bit later, but just to give you a broad perspective of what the industry has achieved over the last 40 years. Over the last 45 years, if you would have noticed, in the early 70s, almost 80–90% of our medicines were imported into India. As Secretary Subburaj mentioned in his opening remarks today. And over the last 40 years, today India is totally, by and large, sufficient on formulations manufactured in India, made in India for the Indian market. So this is a great achievement, I think, where the pharma industry has played a very important role in making products available, high-quality products available for the Indian market at a cost-effective price and affordable to the masses in India. Additionally, I think what the pharma industry we have achieved over the last 15 to 20 years on a global level, if you would have seen in the global generic space, today medicines that are manufactured in India account for more than 25–30% of the volume market of generic medicines consumed in the US and UK. And I think that goes to show the kind of depth, the kind of capabilities and the kind of global competitiveness the Indian pharmaceutical industry has achieved at a global level over the last 15 years. And coming back to your question in terms of manufacturing standards, I think yes. I think what we are seeing actually in the last 4–5 years, I think, as far as the Indian manufacturing companies manufacturing and exporting to US and UK, is a far greater degree of evolution of the quality standards by the regulatory agencies in these markets, and the Indian industry taking attempts and moving up the ladder, so to speak, in order to meet the continuously evolving and changing standards. And I'm sure, I think, the Indian industry, as we have over the last 15 years, proved global standards and competitiveness. In this area also, I think the industry is taking it extremely seriously, is investing in significant ways in terms of meeting these standards, whether it is in quality or whether in technology or whether it is in various other aspects. And we would see, I think, over the next 3 to 5 years, Indian industry emerging even more competitive at a global scale, even in this aspect.
So I agree that, Indian pharma companies are moving up the ladder to meet quality standards. But at the same time, you notice that the frequency of US FDA observations seem to have increased. And doesn't that still point to some gaps when it comes to practices?
Yes, Manvi, as I mentioned the Indian industry has achieved a very significant amount of scale and success in the markets in the US and UK, and some of the other emerging markets also. And as some of these standards in manufacturing and quality are evolving, and the regulatory standards are evolving, so too also the Indian manufacturing industry have to meet up to those standards. There are certain areas where there may be gaps and there may be deficiencies, and the industry is very cognizant of that, recognizes that, and is putting in a lot of effort to meet those standards and requirements. Whether it is, you talk to any company in the industry, and this is one of the topmost topics of discussion, so to speak. And I think we are taking it very seriously, because at the end of the day, the Indian pharma industry realizes that the global opportunity for us is huge and enormous. And in order to meet that and to capitalize on that, there is no other option but to meet those standards and even excel over there.
Okay, so an honest acknowledgement that when it comes to the heads of Indian pharma companies, meeting these regulatory standards is top of the mind. I'm going to change gears, Mr. Khorakiwala. Develop and innovate in India, that piece of the puzzle. Let's talk about that, but using the Wockhardt example. 5 anti-infective drugs that Wockhardt is developing have been accorded, priority review status by the US regulator. Can you just bring us up to speed? What's the latest on that front? And also, any learnings that Wockhardt can share through this process?
Yes, I think if you see the journey of the Indian pharma industry over the last 15 years, we have been successful in the generic space and garnered about 30%, 25 to 30% volume market share in the US and UK, and the most competitive markets globally. The area where we need to move up the value chain in terms of moving from generic products to products that have innovation, whether it is a formulation innovation, or whether it is NC innovation, or whether it is medical devices. And I think that is where the next challenges, the next frontier is, and the next opportunity for the pharma industry is. And I think that's what the conclave is also trying to address. How we in India can move up the value chain, what kind of ecosystem we need to create in India to enable companies, pharmaceutical companies, to move up that value chain. And talking a little bit about our own experience, I think Wockhardt, we have been involved in NC research in antibiotic, anti-infective area since the last 20 years. And it takes a long time, it takes a lot of commitment in research, and it takes a significant amount of investment and development right from the lab up to the market. And only now we are seeing some of the fruits and some of the success of the hard work and effort that we have put in over the last 15 years. And today actually we have been we are in a position where we have received 5 of our products have received an expedited approval from the US, which is called as the QIDP status, Qualified Infectious Disease Protocol. And that gives us an opportunity for taking these products to the market faster. And it is a recognition actually from the regulatory agency of the US that the products that developing have an unmet medical need, and as a result of that they provide a faster track status of development and commercialization. And I think we are in a good position right now to look at some of these opportunities and take it forward.
So you're saying, you're on the faster track for development and commercialization, but I'm going to jump the gun a little bit and ask you, how far out is it, that last mile of regulatory clearance and commercialization?
I think we are involved. We have a number of molecules, and we are in a clinical development, at various phases of clinical development. And we hope and we do expect that we will have something in the market. I think over the next 5 years we will have molecule in the US market, researched in India, developed in India, made in India for the global market.
Well, finally, another subject which your gathering has focused on, FDCs, the fixed dose combination drugs and their fate. Now, I know the case is in court. Wockhardt has products that are affected, but broadly speaking, theoretically, what's the case that companies in the pharma space are making in broad terms?
I think there are a couple of thoughts that I would maybe can share on FDCs. I think matter is sub judice, and therefore, but I think broadly, I think what we have always been advocating, I think, for government and for industry is that whatever we do, it should be science-based. So if the FDCs that are in the market do not have a scientific and a medical rationale, then definitely these should be looked at in a very in a medical scientific way, and appropriate action should be taken. Also, there should be a participative kind of approach between the various stakeholders that are there in the industry, whether it is the industry or whether it is the government or various other stakeholders. So whenever there is an issue or wherever there is a problem, if there is a more participative discussion and more ongoing debate takes place, I think we can find solutions to problems in a way that is amenable, that is productive, that is collaborative to everyone concerned, and yet achieve our common objectives that we have.
Well, I don't get this opportunity often, so I'm going to ask once again, although we've broadly touched upon it, but specific to Wockhardt, any outstanding issues that Wockhardt has with the US FDA that I can encourage you to share with us today?
No, I think we don't have any additional update on anything else that is available in public domain. I think our efforts in terms of remediation and continues with the US FDA and regulatory agencies. There has been significant improvement we have brought about, and our discussions with the FDA also are ongoing. However, the UK regulator has cleared our facilities which had been affected. And at this point of time, I think we are looking forward for having these issues reviewed and resolved with the US FDA.
Okay, so working on a positive outcome. Dr. Murtaza Khorakiwala, indeed a pleasure to have you here on NDTV. Thank you very much for your time and perspective, not just on Wockhardt, but the larger issues that Indian pharma is coping with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandvi. It was a pleasure talking to you.